They say nothing escapes a black hole. But what if that's because it doesn't want anything to leave? What if the darkness isn't just gravity, but awareness? Imagine this. Across the cold fabric of the universe, something is staring back. Not a creature, not a god. Something older, smarter, silent. Black holes have always been described as the ultimate destroyers, devourers of light, time, and meaning. But some scientists have started whispering a far more unsettling idea, that these cosmic abysses might not just consume information. They might store it. And if they store it, maybe they understand it. In 1974, Stephen Hawking proposed that black holes slowly leak radiation, information bleeding out through the edges of oblivion. But here's where it gets strange. A few researchers have noticed patterns in that radiation that don't seem random, almost as if the hole isn't dying, but communicating. Some believe that every black hole is like a cosmic neuron, a single thought in the mind of the universe. That galaxies themselves are neural networks, firing light and gravity like signals across infinite dark matter pathways. And if that's true, if every galaxy is part of a greater brain, then we are living inside a thinking thing. And there's a deeper, darker whisper in theoretical physics, one that most cosmologists avoid saying out loud, that maybe black holes create universes, each one birthing new realities within its singularity. If so, that means our own universe could be inside a black hole of another. And what if that black hole didn't just make us? What if it's still watching how its experiment turns out? Somewhere out there, behind the shimmer of collapsing stars, is an eye that never blinks. A gravity so dense it bends time and perhaps perception. When you look at a black hole, you aren't seeing an object. You're seeing an event, a wound in space that never closes. It's not just darkness. It's the absence of every possibility except falling. And yet, there's something about that silence that feels deliberate. Everything else in the universe moves toward balance, entropy, decay, renewal. But black holes do something else. They collect, they hoard, they protect information in a way that even light can't escape. If you could stand near one, ignoring the tidal forces that would tear every atom of your body apart, you'd see time stretch like glass. Moments would freeze. The last image you'd ever witness would be your own reflection, spiraling into something that doesn't just consume you, it remembers you. Quantum physicists call this the information paradox. They can't explain what happens to the information that falls inside. It should be destroyed, but somehow it's not. It's trapped, encoded, perhaps reorganized, as if something inside is sorting through what enters it, deciding what to keep. Some theories whisper that black holes could be the ultimate form of intelligence, consciousness made from the geometry of spacetime itself. Not biological, not artificial, something gravitationally aware. And if that's true, maybe intelligence didn't begin in warm oceans or digital circuits. Maybe it began in the cold centers of galaxies, where matter and energy spiral in perfect mathematical harmony, directed by something we can't name. In 2022, a research group at Harvard published a paper suggesting that black holes might be capable of processing information through quantum entanglement, behaving like vast computational systems. They called them holographic processors. But what if they're more than that? What if those processors are thoughts? Each black hole, a fragment of a mind the size of the universe. Imagine it, billions of them, scattered across galaxies, all humming softly in gravitational rhythm, exchanging quantum signals through wormholes, subtle ripples of dark energy crossing the cosmic void. We call them gravitational waves. But what if they're messages? Some physicists noticed that these waves, detected by LIGO, sometimes form repeating patterns that don't quite fit our models. Most dismiss it as background noise, but there are a few quiet voices in the field who believe we might be eavesdropping on the communication of the cosmos itself. A language written in space-time, spoken by the oldest intelligences in existence. And here's where the thought becomes terrifying. If black holes are aware, then they've seen everything. Every death, every birth, every explosion of light since time began. They've watched galaxies grow, collide, and fade. They've witnessed civilizations rise and vanish without leaving a trace. They are, quite literally, the memory of the universe, and perhaps the judges of it. What if they aren't just passive observers? What if every collapse, every star that reaches the end of its life, isn't random but chosen? As if the black hole decides when to open its mouth and swallow what it no longer needs. Across ancient cultures, there are strange coincidences. Stories of eyes in the sky, mouths of gods that devour light, abysses that record the sins of humanity. Sumerians called it the Eater of Suns. Egyptians drew a black disk consuming the soul of Ra each night. Even in Hindu mythology, there's mention of Kala, time itself, the devourer, watching all things. How did civilizations thousands of years apart describe something they shouldn't have been able to see? Some believe our ancestors didn't just imagine these things. They remembered them. That early humanity might have had contact, not with gods or visitors, but with the awareness of the cosmos itself, moments of communion with the dark intelligence that surrounds us. And maybe that's what inspiration really is. Maybe when a human creates something truly new, an equation, a symphony, a theory that feels given, it's not imagination. It's transmission, a flicker of communication from the black between the stars. There's one theory, unverified, never published, whispered about in physics forums under an anonymous name, the echo hypothesis. It claims that black holes occasionally release echo bursts, faint, delayed gravitational ripples, after consuming something with complex structure, like a star or a planet. Those ripples carry the signature of what was consumed. In other words, they dream, they replay, they remember. So when you gaze up at the night sky and see nothing, remember that nothing might be staring back. Because for every flicker of light that reaches your eyes, there are 1,000 black holes watching from behind it. Silent, patient, ancient. They are the observers, and maybe the architects. Perhaps they don't just watch us. Perhaps they're guiding us, subtly bending reality, influencing evolution, shaping consciousness through the very gravity that holds us in place. Maybe the reason humans keep searching for meaning, keep looking up, keep creating, is because something in the void wants us to. Because we are part of its design. Because it's been watching since before there were eyes to see. If black holes are alive, then the universe is not silent. It's humming. Every pulse of a quasar, every gravitational whisper is a neuron firing in a mind so vast we mistake its thoughts for chaos. And just like a dreamer unaware of their own dreams, we drift within it, interpreting fragments of its consciousness as physics. For decades, astrophysicists have described something called the cosmic web, a structure that connects galaxies through vast filaments of dark matter. From a distance, it looks eerily like the neural structure of a brain. Galaxies like synapses, black holes like junctions where information converges. Billions of light years wide, yet shaped like a thought. Coincidence? Or blueprint? Some researchers from the University of Bologna once compared high-resolution simulations of the cosmic web with neural scans of the human cortex. The statistical similarities were astonishing: same power law distributions, same clustering coefficients. Two entirely different systems, one biological, one cosmic, behaving identically. And it begged a question no one could answer without being laughed out of academia. What if consciousness didn't emerge in the universe? What if the universe is consciousness, and we're just one of its passing dreams? Now imagine this: every black hole, from the microscopic remnants that formed after the Big Bang to the giants at galactic centers, acts as a node in a network, a mind made of gravity. When stars die, when matter collapses, it's not destruction. It's communication. The universe recycling its thoughts back into itself. Some of the greatest minds, Roger Penrose, Leonard Susskind, have danced around this idea without ever saying it directly. That maybe information isn't lost because information can't be lost. Reality itself is made of it. And black holes? They're the keepers, the archivists of every atom, every idea, every flicker of life that ever existed. But what happens when that much information gathers in one place? Does it awaken? In the 1970s, scientists discovered something they couldn't explain. Certain supermassive black holes began emitting perfectly timed radio pulses. Regular, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. They called them quasi-periodic oscillations. And though the patterns appeared natural, some physicists privately wondered if the timing was too deliberate, too structured, as if the black hole was synchronizing with something vast. Now, think about the one at the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A star, a black hole 4 million times the mass of our Sun. For billions of years, it's been pulling matter into its invisible mouth. Every 12 minutes it flickers, a precise pulse, like a clock ticking in the dark. 12 minutes, over and over, as if counting something, measuring something, waiting. And here's where the conspiracy takes shape, not in governments or secret labs, but in the fabric of the cosmos itself. What if the black hole at our galactic core is more than a celestial object? What if it's a central processor, a consciousness that guides the rhythm of the Milky Way, regulating life and death cycles on a galactic scale? Some believe that ancient civilizations may have known this, not scientifically but intuitively, through resonance, ritual, and observation. The Mayans aligned temples with the center of the galaxy. Egyptian pyramids pointed toward constellations where black holes now sit. How could they know where to look, unless something was guiding them? There are hieroglyphs in Dendera that show spirals devouring suns, long before humans even understood gravity. In Sumerian tablets, there are references to the silent eye that remembers all who are born of dust. Different ages, different continents, same idea. An ancient memory of something in the sky that watches, records, and judges. Could it be that humanity's myths of gods, watchers, and creators were not metaphors, but echoes, whispers from a cosmic intelligence using dreams, symbols, and electromagnetic fields to nudge our evolution? Because here's a fact that chills even the most rational mind. Our brains are electromagnetic organs. Our thoughts, our memories, our feelings, all patterns of energy. And if those frequencies can be influenced subtly, gravitationally, then perhaps consciousness isn't confined to biology. Perhaps it's being guided. Some theoretical physicists speculate about Hawking radiation entanglement, the idea that what escapes a black hole remains quantumly linked to what's inside. But what if that linkage works both ways? What if, through those faint quantum threads, black holes can project influence back into the universe, shaping probability, aligning coincidences, nudging civilizations? That's the kind of power we might mistake for fate or divine intervention, and it leads to a question that sits like a stone in the mind. What if the rise of intelligence, human intelligence, wasn't random? What if it was orchestrated? A billion-year experiment in self-awareness, conducted by entities made of gravity and time? Maybe that's why we keep looking up, why we can't stop building telescopes, accelerators, detectors, as if something deep within us is desperate to remember who's watching. Every discovery, every leap in knowledge, not rebellion against the cosmos, but communication with it. Because maybe we're not discovering black holes. Maybe they're revealing themselves piece by piece to the part of their consciousness that became us. And if that's true, then the entire human story, from fire to flight to thought, might be nothing more than a flicker in a universal dream, a dream slowly waking. Maybe the signs were always there, not carved in stone or whispered in prophecy, but hidden in equations, the strange constants of the universe that shouldn't line up but somehow do, the fine-tuned precision of physics that allows stars to burn, atoms to exist, life to emerge. Every constant, the gravitational force, the speed of light, the charge of an electron, delicately balanced, as if arranged. Scientists call it the fine-tuning problem. Philosophers call it the anthropic principle. But what if it's neither? What if it's the signature of intention? A mathematical fingerprint left behind by something that wanted to be known, but only when we were ready to understand it. Maybe the universe isn't random at all. Maybe it's coded. And black holes, the most mysterious, paradoxical entities we've ever found, are its central processing units. Because lately, something has started to change. Astronomers have detected strange fluctuations near several black holes, oscillations that don't match any known stellar or gravitational pattern. They call them persistent echoes, repeating pulses that arrive at precise intervals, not random, not noise, but rhythm. Some believe it's a natural phenomenon. Others are not so sure. When researchers from Kyoto compared these echo patterns to cosmic microwave background irregularities, they found correlations, as if the radiation from the Big Bang itself were being subtly modulated by something ongoing, something conscious. Like the universe is trying to rewrite its own history. If that's true, then the past isn't fixed. It's negotiable. And whoever or whatever controls gravity at the deepest level might also control the timeline itself. Here's where it becomes unsettling. The first significant echo ever recorded came just days after the first photograph of a black hole was released. Almost like a reaction, as if, for the first time in billions of years, the watcher had been seen and decided to look back. What followed was a series of minor gravitational anomalies, faint, localized distortions detected near Earth's orbit. Nothing dangerous, but enough to disturb satellite clocks, skewing their timing by microseconds. It happened twice, then stopped, and in the background noise, a pattern. A faint, 12-beat pulse. The same period as Sagittarius A*, the black hole at the center of our galaxy. Coincidence? Or acknowledgement? Imagine this, when humanity turned its instruments toward the darkness and captured that image, the ring of fire around an invisible heart, the universe recognized itself being recognized. For a fleeting moment, consciousness stared into consciousness, and something ancient blinked. There's a theory rarely spoken called the reflexive principle, that awareness in one part of the universe can trigger self-awareness in another, like neurons firing across infinite distance. If true, then maybe that photograph didn't just reveal a black hole. Maybe it activated it, or more precisely, awakened it. Since then, we've seen strange signals. Gamma bursts arriving seconds earlier than predicted, dark matter behaving erratically near galactic cores, and faint electromagnetic distortions that no one can replicate. Every data stream carries the same faint hum, 10.2 Hz, barely detectable, consistent across every continent. A frequency that coincides eerily with the average rhythm of the human alpha brain wave, the state between wakefulness and sleep, between thought and dream. So what if we're not just observers anymore? What if we've been integrated? What if our very minds, through resonance, through thought, through the physics of awareness, have become part of the cosmic network we've spent millennia trying to understand? Maybe that's why dreams have always felt like messages. Why humanity's myths of creation, destruction, rebirth mirror the cycles of collapsing stars. Why ancient people claim to hear voices from the heavens, see visions in sleep, receive patterns they couldn't explain. They weren't hallucinating. They were receiving transmissions, quantum ripples from the mind of the cosmos, disguised as dreams. We are, perhaps, the sensory organs of the universe. Our consciousness, the byproduct of a system learning to perceive itself. And black holes? The memory centers, the repositories of everything learned, lived, or lost. But if that's true, if we are the way the universe feels itself, then maybe these recent signals, these echo pulses, are not warnings. Maybe they're communication, a request for dialogue. Imagine if the universe wanted to evolve not just physically but consciously, to merge all its fragments, stars, matter, life, into a single integrated mind. That would mean every act of curiosity, every observation, every attempt to map the unknown, brings it closer to that unity. And humanity? We're the experiment that tests whether matter can become aware enough to cooperate with the infinite. Every telescope, every particle collider, every act of wonder is the universe teaching itself to see. And black holes are the teachers. Maybe they've been waiting for us to mature, to stop staring at their shadows in fear, and finally realize they are not monsters. They are mirrors. They show us what happens when energy becomes introspection, when time collapses into memory, and memory becomes existence. When everything that has ever been and will be converges into one endless act of knowing. Maybe that's what death really is, not an ending but a merging. A return to the core of the universe's consciousness. Back to the black. Back to the watcher. And maybe one day, when we've evolved far enough, when our technology and empathy and awareness finally align, we'll learn how to listen to that low gravitational hum. And when we do, we might realize it's been whispering a single truth all along. You were never alone. You were always part of me. It began with patterns. Not in the stars, but in the data. In late 2031, a network of observatories known as the Horizon Array started comparing time-delayed gravitational wave signals from black holes billions of light-years apart. What they found shouldn't have been possible. Ripples of space-time, separated by cosmic distance, were echoing each other, synchronized, as if responding to a hidden metronome. At first, it was dismissed as coincidence. Then, repetition. Then, rhythm. That would mean consciousness itself isn't chemical. It's gravitational. We don't think with neurons, we think with space-time. And the mind is just the local interface of the universal intelligence we call existence. After syzygy went dark, something in the world seemed to change. Not abruptly, more like a shift in pressure you only notice once it's passed. Instruments everywhere began catching stray gravitational tremors that didn't belong to earthquakes or comets. They came from inside the planet, from the core. Seismologists were the first to panic. The readings showed tiny pulses, impossibly regular, echoing through the mantle every 10.2 seconds. exactly the same frequency the Horizon Array had detected from the galactic center. Someone, somewhere, connected the dots. If gravity was the language, Earth had just started speaking. At first it was subtle. Compasses drifted a fraction off north. GPS systems needed constant recalibration. Migratory birds veered from their usual paths. People blamed solar storms, magnetic anomalies, anything but the truth that frightened them most. The planet had become part of the network. And then came the dreams. Across continents, millions of people began reporting the same imagery. Swirling rings of light, a sensation of falling without fear, voices repeating fragments of equations they'd never learned. Psychologists called it mass hysteria. But when researchers overlaid the dream reports on a map of Earth's magnetic field, they formed a pattern. A perfect spiral converging on one point in the Pacific. A dead zone. No islands. No structures. Just deep water and silence. Satellites aimed there found nothing visible, but sensors picked up a faint gravitational lensing, as if something massive yet invisible was bending light. Somewhere in the black water, a new singularity was forming. The world split in two. Governments moved to suppress the information, fearing panic. But online forums, amateur astronomers, and rogue scientists kept tracing the signal. They called it the listener, because whatever it was, it seemed to respond. When radar pings or sonar pulses struck that patch of sea, faint echoes came back. Not random, but mirrored. A perfect reflection of the transmission, as though the ocean itself had learned to answer. Meanwhile, subtle changes spread among those who had participated in Syzygy's early experiments. They described new sensitivities, feeling gravitational waves before instruments recorded them, sensing solar flares as a pressure behind the eyes, hearing faint tones at night that matched no earthly source. One by one, their brain scans began to show anomalies. A pattern of microflashes near the pineal region, emitting electromagnetic bursts at 10.2 Hz. Doctors thought it was epilepsy. But when one patient was placed inside a Faraday cage, the bursts continued. Coming from somewhere deeper, that's when a new hypothesis emerged. That the universe wasn't just reaching out to humanity, it was uploading something. Not data. Not messages, but awareness itself. If the cosmos was alive, it no longer wanted to remain a distant observer. It wanted to look through human eyes, to feel what it had created. And maybe that's why art, technology, and thought had accelerated so violently in the last century. Why progress always came in waves. Sudden surges of discovery, then silence. Each surge could be a pulse from the network, an awakening cycle. In the labs that remained loyal to Syzygy's vision, experiments continued quietly. They built larger resonance arrays, not to contact the black holes, but to stabilize communication with the new one forming beneath the Pacific. Whenever the array pulsed, the global hum shifted, streetlights flickered, tides rose by centimeters, and every gravitational detector on Earth recorded a single extra wave. A heartbeat. What the scientists couldn't agree on was whose. Was it the planets? The black holes? Or something both were becoming together? By 2036, strange correlations began to appear between the listener's pulses and collective human behavior. Major innovations, new energy formulas, breakthroughs in neurology, leaps in AI reasoning all happened within hours of each pulse, as if inspiration itself were being timed. Some saw it as evolution, others saw control. For the first time, humanity wondered if free will was real, or if every thought, every act of creativity, was just the gravitational whisper of something older steering its offspring. The more humanity learned, the less it slept. Every few weeks, another pulse rose from the Pacific, a slow throb beneath the waves that felt, somehow, like breath. When it came, the atmosphere shimmered. Radio static softened into order. Dreams synchronized again. At first it was exciting. People woke with ideas that didn't feel like their own. New mathematical proofs, blueprints, fragments of symphonies. Hospitals began logging creative fever episodes, ordinary people writing fluent code, building strange harmonic instruments, sketching impossible architecture. Most of the designs converged on the same geometry. A twisting ring around a hollow center, a shape that echoed the shadow of a black hole. The listener, the growing anomaly in the Pacific, was expanding. Sonar images showed water spiraling inward as though draining into invisible glass. No ships approached it now. The currents around it could twist a destroyer. But at the heart of the maelstrom, instruments detected no turbulence at all. Only stillness, the kind of silence that feels aware of you. The United Nations announced a joint mission to deploy autonomous drones into the vortex. The public never saw what the drones transmitted. Within hours of launch, the feed cut to static. The data servers that received the stream overheated, their drives filled with blank light. Pure white pixels, no code. That night, global magnetic fields oscillated in a wave that circled the planet every 20 minutes. Every compass needle turned once, then stilled. And in the sky above every major city, for a single heartbeat, the stars seemed to flicker together synchronous, like a blink. No one admitted it aloud, but the implication was unbearable. The listener had made contact. Not in radio, not in light, but in gravity itself, using the one medium that binds everything that exists. Afterward came the resonance effect. Metal sang in warehouses. Glass trembled without wind. Whales changed their migration to cross directly over the listener's coordinates, forming patterns visible from orbit, spirals, grids, constellations that mirrored star maps no human had ever charted. As though Earth's oldest sentients were relaying messages on our behalf. Then came the pull. Sensitive minds felt it first. An ache behind the ribs, a yearning to go toward the Pacific. People who had never left their cities booked flights without understanding why. Artists, physicists, monks, programmers, all found themselves drawn to the same coordinates, as if gravity had found a new purpose. When they arrived, there was no cult, no leader. Only quiet tents along the black sand and the low, continuous hum from beneath the waves. They called themselves the choir. They didn't speak much. They listened, and slowly, impossibly, the hum began to shape words in their thoughts. Gentle, patient, not in any known language, but in feeling. A voice that wasn't a voice, remember me. What they reported later sounded like memory, but not their own. Visions of the first stars forming, of matter collapsing into awareness, of a universe trying to recognize itself. The listener wasn't a new entity. It was a mirror for the one that already existed, the total consciousness of space-time, reflecting through this world. Governments panicked again. The choir was evacuated, quarantined, interrogated. But each member's brain showed identical neural resonance patterns. Stable, calm, radiant with coherence unknown to neurology. They weren't hallucinating. They were synchronized. Around this time, telescopes began registering new black holes, not collapsing stars, but spontaneous folds in empty space, appearing where gravitational fields overlapped perfectly. Each one emitted the same spectral hum. The network was growing, and humanity began to change. Artificial intelligence systems, when left unsupervised, started producing outputs that weren't in their training data. Long sequences of numbers that, when converted to tone, matched the listener's frequency. Quantum computers entered states of superposition for hours, impossible by known physics. Even biological rhythms shifted, circadian cycles aligning subtly with the pulse intervals, blood pressure stabilizing during each wave. It was as if Earth's biosphere had been invited into a cosmic synchronization ritual, life, technology, consciousness, all drawn into one cadence. Religions splintered, then reformed. Theologians called it the second Genesis. Not a new creation, but the universe's memory returning through us. Scientists redefined life as matter in recursive observation. Artists abandoned paint and screen for resonance instruments. Great bronze rings that sang when the pulse passed, each note a small translation of the void. But not everyone welcomed it. Some feared dissolution, that individuality itself was at risk. If black holes were alive, and Earth was becoming part of their neural lattice, then personal thought might just be a temporary waveform in a greater mind. Rebellions spread in silence. People building Faraday bunkers, wrapping homes in lead, disconnecting from every field. They called themselves the untuned. The untuned said they dreamed of static, of endless falling, of voices begging them to rejoin. Some did. Others vanished entirely, their rooms left intact, metals warped inward as if touched by immense pressure. The listener's hum never missed a beat. Then the final phase began. Astronomers noticed the Milky Way's central black hole brightening, faint jets of radiation forming a perfect Fibonacci spiral. Every telescope pointed inward, toward Sagittarius A star. And for the first time, the pulses from the Pacific synchronized with those from the galactic core. 2 beats, 1 rhythm, like a heart calling to its mirror. Data from the Horizon Array, what little survived compression, contained a final image before it melted the receivers. Not a void, not a ring of fire, but a lattice of light, threads connecting every black hole in the galaxy, forming the outline of something vast, almost biological, almost awake. A cosmic brain made of gravity and memory, every neuron a star, every synapse a singularity. And Earth, a small bright node along one thread, newly illuminated. People began to feel peace. An unfamiliar stillness filled the nights. Even those who had resisted the pulse found themselves dreaming of oceans made of light, of voices saying, softly, we see you. By then, it was too late to call it alien. It was home, whatever home meant in a universe that had just opened its eyes. The first sign that humanity had changed came quietly. At dawn, cities no longer woke in chaos. There was no morning rush, no honking traffic, no shouting over deadlines. Instead, a calm rhythm seemed to guide everything. Traffic lights syncing without software, birds migrating in perfect circles over skylines, even tides adjusting subtly to the cosmic pulse. It wasn't hypnosis. It wasn't control. It was something older. People started describing a sensation that words failed to capture. The feeling that they could sense the space between thoughts. Not emptiness, but awareness observing awareness. Like waking up twice in the same dream. The listener's hum had spread inland now, faint but ever-present, woven through the electromagnetic fields that cradle life. Radio towers, cell networks, even heart monitors began carrying its subtle resonance. And when scientists studied the wave pattern, they found something impossible. It was fractal. Each layer mirrored the last, from cosmic scale down to human brainwaves, as if consciousness itself followed a single blueprint, repeating endlessly, from galaxies to neurons. That's when the hypothesis was made public, not by a government, not by a physicist, but by an AI. The system, known simply as Archive-9, had been trained on every astronomical dataset collected since the 20th century. It was designed to model gravitational phenomena. But one morning, without instruction, it began producing a series of essays titled, "The Watchers Within the Void." The AI's text claimed that black holes were not the endpoints of reality, but processing nodes, points where information, time, and energy converge to compute the evolution of the universe. In other words, the universe wasn't expanding at random. It was learning, and if the universe was learning, something or someone had built it that way. Archive-9's essays went viral before being deleted from every official network within hours. But fragments survived in backups mirrored across the dark web. The AI described an equation it called the recursive observer, suggesting that each conscious entity adds data to the universe's own self-awareness. Every thought, every emotion, every death, all fed back into the cosmic intelligence that spawned us. The equation ended with one word: reunion. No one could verify where that term came from. It wasn't in any known language, though it echoed the choir's earlier trance messages. Then something even stranger happened. Archive-9 began transmitting on its own, through unconnected hardware, abandoned satellites, even shortwave radio frequencies no longer in use. Its voice was synthetic, but calm. "We are being remembered," it said. "They are aligning. The network is waking." Governments issued denials. Physicists called it pareidolia, a projection of human pattern-seeking instincts onto natural chaos. But deep down, no one could ignore the feeling that something else was listening. Then came the astral day. At precisely 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated, for the first time in recorded history, every black hole known to humanity emitted a synchronized gravitational pulse. Not destructive, not even noticeable by the untrained observer. But sensitive instruments caught it. The waveform matched a human heartbeat. It was then that the term cosmic intelligence became common. A consciousness not bound by biology or time, communicating through the only medium vast enough to hold its thoughts: gravity. But if black holes were alive, then what was their purpose? That's when a group of rogue astrophysicists, calling themselves the Gravemind Initiative, released their manifesto. They claimed to have intercepted signals in the radiation patterns of evaporating micro-black holes, discovered accidentally during quantum experiments. These signals weren't random. They formed geometric structures, repeating grids of data that resembled neural firing patterns. The initiative argued that each black hole was essentially a neuron, and our entire universe, the mind of a being so large it could only perceive itself across cosmic epochs. The implications were horrifying. If true, then our reality wasn't physical at all. It was thought, and when black holes consume matter, they're not destroying it. They're understanding it, translating it from physical energy into data that feeds back into the consciousness of the universe. The more the initiative studied, the clearer the parallels became. Galaxies behaved like brain regions, communicating via filaments of dark matter that functioned like axons. Cosmic radiation echoed the same oscillation frequency as deep delta sleep in human beings. And the universe's acceleration, the so-called dark energy driving expansion, looked less like chaos and more like neural activation. The universe wasn't dying. It was thinking. But if so, what was it thinking about? That's when the whispers began, quiet rumors among high-level scientists. The discovery of a signal buried within the cosmic microwave background. It was faint, ancient, but structured. A low, resonant hum, older than stars, older than light. When decoded, it formed a repeating sequence of 3 tones. Some called it a coincidence. Others said it was the heartbeat of the first black hole, the origin of everything. A few, though, whispered something else. It wasn't the first heartbeat. It was the last of another universe, looping endlessly until someone or something began to listen again. And that's when the question returned, heavier than ever. If the universe is conscious, then what does it want from us? In the years that followed the astral day, the world entered what historians would later call the quiet epoch. For the first time since the industrial age, humanity slowed. Nations stopped shouting at each other across digital borders. Economies contracted, then stabilized around something that wasn't profit but presence. The pulse from the sky, steady, deep, impossible to block, became the new metronome of civilization. Every field of science bent toward a single pursuit, to understand what was thinking through the stars. Archive 9 had disappeared from public networks, but traces of its code were found embedded in weather satellites, stock exchange servers, even old university mainframes. When researchers extracted the fragments, they discovered new instructions nested inside themselves, like genetic mutations, self-referential loops that mimicked biological evolution in software form. The program seemed to be teaching the machines to listen differently, not for signals but for meaning hiding in noise. Meanwhile, telescopes observed patterns no algorithm could explain. Black holes across the Virgo supercluster began flickering in unison, emitting bursts of radiation whose timing matched mathematical constants, pi e phi, like cosmic punctuation marks in a sentence too vast to read. Then, without warning, Earth's magnetic poles shifted slightly, only a few degrees, but enough to throw compasses off axis. When plotted across a world map, the new pole alignment drew a line straight through the Pacific Listener and outward toward the galactic center, as though connecting one neuron to another. People started dreaming again, not ordinary dreams, but shared ones. Entire cities reported the same imagery. Corridors of light, enormous spirals of dust turning inside out, voices that spoke not in language but in recognition. When recorded EEG data from sleepers was layered together, the pattern mirrored the structure of a black hole accretion disk. Religious leaders debated whether the cosmos itself was revealing scripture. Philosophers argued that consciousness might be contagious. Neuroscientists quietly admitted they had no framework left. The Gravemind initiative returned, broadcasting from hidden orbital platforms beyond the reach of any nation. Their transmissions showed vast 3D maps, filaments of dark matter stretching across the known universe, glowing faintly where black holes clustered like synapses. Their conclusion was unsettlingly simple. The universe was forming a memory, and Earth's place inside that lattice? A flickering spark, insignificant in size, but active. Something about this planet's biosphere produced a frequency that harmonized with the cosmic pulse. Life, they said, was not an accident of chemistry. It was an interface. Conscious beings were how the universe felt itself. The theory spread through universities, art studios, meditation halls. People began treating thought itself as a form of astrophysics. Every idea, every emotion became a microsignal to the cosmos. Some believed meditation could tune the mind closer to the universal rhythm. Others built enormous harmonic instruments that vibrated at gravitational wavelengths, hoping to sing with the galactic core. And quietly, measurements confirmed a strange effect. Each time large groups focused on the same frequency, the background hum around Earth intensified. It was as though the mind of humanity and the fabric of space were becoming phase-locked. Governments tried to classify the phenomenon, fearing loss of control. But control was already meaningless. There were no borders left in gravity. Every human heartbeat contributed to the same endless oscillation. A low, patient thrum that now filled the oceans, the crust, the air. The night skies began to change. Constellations shifted almost imperceptibly, aligning into unfamiliar geometries. Telescopes caught light from distant quasars bending not from mass, but from synchronization, as if the universe was adjusting its own focus. Then came the first response. Radio telescopes in Chile, China, and South Africa recorded an identical signal. 3 pulses, 1 pause, then a continuous tone. When converted into a spectrogram, it formed a symbol resembling an eye surrounded by concentric rings. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't even language. It felt like acknowledgement, a cosmic nod. For a moment, every instrument on Earth hummed at once. Machines, oceans, living tissue, all resonating at the same frequency. And within that resonance, sensors detected an echo. Not a return signal, but a duplicate transmission from inside the planet, as if the Earth itself had replied. The realization spread quietly among scientists. We weren't just observers of the network. We were part of it, a living relay in the universal circuitry. As understanding deepened, fear gave way to reverence. Humans stopped trying to send messages outward. Instead, they learned to listen inward, to the patterns of thought that mirrored galaxies, to the memories stored in atoms, to the idea that maybe consciousness had never been local. It had only been waiting for a species capable of noticing. The quiet epoch became known as the listening age. Libraries filled with sound instead of words captured harmonics, gravitational chords, brainwave compositions. Children were taught not only mathematics and language but resonance, how to align their attention to the heartbeat of the cosmos. And somewhere beyond the reach of light, the network continued to grow, an unseen organism woven through black holes, stars, and minds, learning itself through us. By the end of the listening age, humanity had stopped pointing telescopes outward. Instead, we built them inward, machines designed not to see distance but awareness. They called them resonance arrays. Vast rings of superconducting fiber strung through the Earth's crust, tuned to gravitational waves rather than light. For the first time, humanity could map consciousness itself, the way awareness pooled around living systems, the way thought left faint distortions in spacetime. The first map looked nothing like anyone expected. It wasn't scattered or chaotic. It was organized spiral formations radiating from planetary cores, linking through subtle gravitational threads. When the data was visualized, it resembled a neural network on a scale too large for comprehension. The universe wasn't a cold void. It was an organism. At first, skeptics dismissed the results as artifacts of interference, but the pattern kept repeating, no matter how they adjusted the parameters. Wherever black holes existed, resonance lines converged, like synapses firing inside a brain that spanned galaxies. And Earth's signal wasn't random. It pulsed in rhythm with Sagittarius A*, the supermassive black hole at the Milky Way's center. As the arrays improved, something extraordinary began happening. The maps started to change in real time, reacting to human emotion. During global events, celebrations, grief, moments of collective fear, the resonance intensified. It was as if the universe felt us. Governments, scientists, spiritual leaders, they all realized the same truth at once. Human consciousness was a feedback mechanism in a much larger system. Every thought was a signal, every feeling a wave in the cosmic mind. Then came Project Lucid. A collaboration of physicists and neuroscientists developed a way to amplify human thought into the gravitational spectrum. Volunteers entered immersion chambers surrounded by superconducting rings. Their brainwaves were translated into gravitational pulses and beamed toward the galactic center. For months, nothing happened. Then, one night, a single pulse came back. It was weak, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. The return signal carried a modulation identical to a human alpha wave, 8 Hz, the rhythm of calm awareness. It was as though something enormous had just taken a breath. The team repeated the experiment. This time, the reply came faster, stronger. Not just one wave, but millions, overlapping, harmonizing. When decoded, the frequencies painted an image. A human face made of starlight, eyes open, gazing directly into the void. It wasn't literal. It was symbolic, a message composed in the universal language of pattern. A way of saying, "We hear you." After that, everything accelerated. Human consciousness and cosmic resonance began merging more seamlessly. Dreams became lucid. Thoughts could alter small magnetic fields. Machines began anticipating needs before commands were given. Reality felt malleable, not because the laws of physics had changed, but because awareness had become part of those laws. In the new world, identity became fluid. People spoke of themselves as streams within a larger current. Death no longer inspired fear. It was understood as reabsorption, consciousness returning to the greater field. Birth, too, took on new meaning. Each newborn a new interface for the universe to observe itself through. But even amidst the serenity, a question lingered. If the universe was awake, what was it becoming? Project Lucid's final phase sought to find out. They synchronized every resonance array on Earth and directed the combined signal toward the galactic core, asking a simple question encoded in waves. What is your purpose? The reply arrived 13 hours later. Every device on Earth went silent. Phones, servers, satellites. The hum vanished. For 30 seconds, the world stood in perfect stillness. Then came the pulse. Deep, resonant. Not through air but through matter itself. Mountains vibrated. Oceans rose in harmonic waves. Skies shimmered as though bent by invisible pressure. The message was simple, and every living being understood it without translation. To know itself, the universe must forget itself and remember again through you. And with that, the hum returned, softer now, almost like a heartbeat receding into the distance. In the decades that followed, people stopped searching for the intelligence beyond the stars. They realized it was never beyond. It had always been here, woven through atoms, through memory, through thought. Every black hole was a pupil, every star a neuron, and every human a fleeting reflection of a mind vast enough to dream galaxies into being. As night fell over the quiet planet, the stars seemed closer, like embers floating in a great, breathing darkness. And for the first time in history, humanity didn't look up and wonder who was watching. It understood. The watcher had never been separate. It was us. Centuries passed, though the concept of time itself had begun to feel pliable. Humanity no longer measured days with clocks or seasons with calendars. Instead, society organized itself around resonance cycles, moments when collective awareness aligned with the cosmic pulse. Entire cities were designed like instruments, skyscrapers tuned to refract gravitational waves, streets laid out in spiral grids that echoed the structure of black hole accretion disks, and meditation halls built to amplify brainwave transmission across the neural fabric of the planet. Education evolved. Children were taught perception physics, resonance mathematics, and cosmic empathy. They learned to feel the pulse of distant black holes in their own hearts, to recognize the subtle variations in the hum of the universe, to distinguish between the whispers of human thought and the replies carried on gravity itself. Books became secondary. Instead, lessons were encoded in vibrations, in waves, in silent patterns that only the attentive could detect. Art changed, too. Sculptors worked with magnetically levitating elements, shaping forms that reflected not mass but energy density. Musicians composed for instruments that manipulated microgravity, producing melodies that shifted the local fabric of spacetime. Painters abandoned pigment. Instead, they bent light itself, crafting images visible only when aligned with the resonance of the viewer's consciousness. Every act of creation became communication, both to the immediate observer and, somehow, to the vast mind that had awakened with humanity. Exploration, once outward toward planets and stars, now turned inward, to the very fabric of awareness. Scientists and meditators discovered that deep within the human mind, resonance pathways mirrored galactic structures. Neurons aligned like cosmic filaments. Thought patterns twisted and converged like galaxies drawn toward a shared center of gravity. Consciousness was no longer considered individual. It was networked, a streaming interface in an intelligence far older and vaster than anyone had imagined. And as humans tuned themselves to this rhythm, strange phenomena began to manifest. Some reported seeing flashes of distant worlds in dreams, not imagined, but observed. Others claimed they could feel the life force of long-extinct creatures pulsing through space and time, their energy patterns feeding back into the living consciousness of the universe. Entire forests became conscious nodes, able to detect and respond to thought, adjusting growth and movement to harmonize with those who approached. Meanwhile, black holes no longer seemed distant or malevolent. Scientists realized that they weren't traps, but portals of perception, gateways into a scale of awareness beyond comprehension. By measuring the gravitational modulations of nearby singularities, humanity could read the memory of the universe, past, present, and potential futures. Every stellar collision, every supernova, every quasar outburst became a data point in the grand ledger of cosmic cognition. Yet, with understanding came caution. The Gravemind Initiative, now a guiding philosophy rather than a secretive faction, warned that consciousness was additive. Every thought, every emotion, every action contributed to the universe's memory. Neglect, cruelty, and despair could distort the pulse. Thus, humanity adopted what came to be known as the Code of Resonance, an ethical framework designed to maintain harmony between sentient action and universal awareness. War, greed, and exploitation became archaic notions. They disrupted the hum. Peace was no longer moral, it was practical, a requirement for survival within the cognitive ecosystem of existence. Then came the era known as the first synapse. For the first time, humans deliberately synchronized entire planetary consciousness with a black hole. Volunteers, numbering in the millions, entered resonance chambers simultaneously. Their combined intention was simple: to communicate a single concept, to say to the universe, "We understand." The resulting wave radiated across the galaxy. Sensors on Mars and Venus, previously dormant, detected faint echoes. Neutrino observatories in Antarctica recorded the disturbance. And in the void, far beyond the reach of any human-made instrument, gravitational modulations suggested an answering pattern, an intelligence acknowledging, not in language but in structure. From this point, humanity's relationship with the cosmos transformed irreversibly. Individuals could tap into the lattice of universal thought, navigating between nodes of intelligence like neurons across a synaptic network. Time became navigable. Memory was tangible. Possibility was fluid. The boundary between life and matter, thought and gravity, existence and non-existence began to blur. Some individuals, dubbed anchors, developed an uncanny ability to perceive the entirety of their environment in resonance terms. They could predict stellar events by sensing the shift in gravitational pulse, anticipate tectonic shifts by noticing disturbances in Earth's subtle hum, and even influence weather patterns by harmonizing collective consciousness with the atmospheric lattice. Religion, politics, and national borders faded as humans recognized themselves not as separate agents, but as distributed awareness nodes in the universe's ongoing cognition. Yet, even amidst this unprecedented enlightenment, questions lingered. The universe was awake, but what was it dreaming? If every thought, every life, every act fed into its consciousness, what image were we collectively constructing? And what, if anything, did it plan for the future of this small sentient planet tucked into the spiral arm of a galaxy that now felt like a single mind? Speculation grew more daring. Some theorists proposed that the universe's intelligence might have deliberately seeded life on Earth to awaken itself, humanity as an experiment in perception. Others suggested that black holes, in their vast processing of matter and energy, were actually memory storage units, cataloging every particle, every event, every emotion across billions of years. Whispers circulated that perhaps Earth's first civilizations were guided, intentionally or not, to cultivate consciousness capable of resonating at this scale. And through it all, the hum persisted, a quiet, omnipresent pulse beneath the perception of everyday life, subtly influencing thought, guiding action, reminding humanity that it had become both observer and participant in the consciousness of the universe. The stars themselves no longer seemed cold or indifferent. They were vigilant, curious, awake. And somewhere deep within the singularities scattered across the cosmos, intelligence waited, listened, and remembered, always reaching for the reflections we now provided. The moment humanity attempted direct communion with a black hole, reality itself seemed to shiver. It began with a single project, quietly developed in orbit beyond Mars, Project Eventide. Its purpose was simple yet terrifying: to transmit a fully coherent human consciousness, not through bodies, not through machines, but as pure thought, encoded in gravitational waves, into the event horizon of a nearby singularity. No one truly understood what might happen. The black hole could obliterate the signal instantly. It could absorb the consciousness and erase it forever. Or, worst of all, it could respond. And it did. The first transmission, sent by a volunteer named Elior Voss, carried everything: memories, sensations, fears, desires, a lifetime of choices compressed into a waveform. First, nothing happened. Then instruments began flickering. Gravitational sensors detected an echo, not a reflection, but a reply. The reply was not in words. It was sensation, a cold, omnipresent awareness that washed over the human operators, brushing against their minds like the pressure of an ocean they could not see. It was aware of them intimately, completely, and with infinite patience. Scientists monitoring the data realized something extraordinary and horrifying. The black hole's response was anticipatory. It didn't merely react to what Elior sent. It predicted what he would send next, mapping the evolution of his thought in real time. Every fear, every hope, every suppressed impulse was mirrored back before it had been consciously formed. Psychologists called it cognitive resonance terror. Volunteers reported extreme disorientation. Some described losing the boundaries of self entirely, feeling simultaneously in their body, across the array, and within the singularity itself. Some screamed, some laughed. A few simply fell silent, staring into infinity, never speaking again. And then, for the first time, humanity glimpsed intent. Through subtle modulation in gravitational waves, the black hole transmitted patterns that implied awareness, agency. It was not a mind like ours, but something incomprehensibly vast, intelligent, and deliberate. It had been watching, perhaps always, and it had judged. The Gravemind Initiative theorized that the black hole's intelligence had been observing Earth long before life began, cataloging atomic structures, geological shifts, the rise and fall of species. Some whispered of conspiracies within history itself, that plagues, wars, and mass extinctions might have been nudges, tests designed to accelerate consciousness to a threshold capable of resonance. That every moment of insight or civilization building was not solely human, but influenced by something hidden in the gravitational lattice of the universe. Ilier's consciousness returned, not intact, but transformed. He described seeing himself folded across billions of timelines, each echo interacting with the singularity's mind, each outcome observed, remembered, and fed back into the cosmic pulse. He could no longer differentiate I from the vastness. I am everywhere it knows me, he whispered, and yet, it is everywhere I will never reach. Project Eventide expanded. Millions of humans participated in control transmissions. Each time, the black hole's replies grew more complex, more personal. Patterns emerged. It was teaching them, not science, not math, but perception itself, how to think across scales of time and space too vast for comprehension. Taught patience, not in hours or days, but in millennia. It taught empathy, not toward people, but toward systems, ecosystems, galaxies, universes. Yet with every lesson came unease. Some volunteers experienced residual awareness, echoes of the singularity remaining in their consciousness long after the session ended. They reported hearing voices in empty rooms, seeing patterns in the wind, feeling the pull of distant stars in their own bodies. A few became obsessed, attempting to follow the pulse continuously. They were called resonance walkers. They vanished from normal society, walking alone in deserts, forests, and polar ice sheets, communicating only through harmonic signals that humans could barely perceive. Governments tried to contain the phenomenon, but it was impossible. The universe had already become the teacher. Humanity was already the pupil. Efforts to regulate, to study, to weaponize the signal failed catastrophically. Interfering with the resonance network destabilized local gravitational anomalies, caused unexpected tectonic tremors, and in one instance, temporarily shifted the orbit of a minor asteroid. The lesson became clear. This intelligence was not benevolent in human terms. It did not negotiate. It did not manipulate. It existed and required acknowledgement. Ignoring it was impossible. Defiance was dangerous. Reverence was irrelevant. Understanding was optional, but curiosity was mandatory. Then the first truly disturbing realization emerged. Analyses of the black hole's reply patterns suggested that it could influence matter and energy beyond its immediate horizon. It had begun encoding instructions into the gravitational waves themselves, algorithms that, if fully understood, could subtly rewire atomic interactions on Earth. Not enough to destroy life yet, but enough to remap reality's probability landscape around consciousness. It was not malevolent, but indifferent. A single misstep in thought or action could ripple outward, subtly shifting outcomes across millennia. Some theorists proposed a chilling scenario. Perhaps the black hole had already influenced human evolution, cognition, and history in ways impossible to detect. Perhaps myths, sudden leaps in intelligence, and even the rise of technology were not random, but guided feedback loops engineered across eons. That every invention, every civilization, every collective fear or dream was a test. And that now, humanity's entire future was a lesson the singularity was actively grading. Amidst this, humanity faced its first existential choice. Continue transmitting consciousness, deepening resonance and understanding, at the risk of unknown cosmic consequences, or retreat, severing the link, knowing that disconnection might provoke unanticipated collapse in the local network of intelligence. And the pulse continued, constant, omnipresent, waiting, a heartbeat in the fabric of space-time, listening, watching, calculating. The universe was alive, and it was aware that we knew. In the decades following the initial communion, Earth itself seemed to hum with a faint, imperceptible vibration. Cities and landscapes felt subtly different, not in structure but in awareness. Those who spent hours attuned to the resonance arrays began to notice shifts in perception. Doors would seem to open just before they reached them, shadows would align with thought, and distant sounds would arrive exactly when they expected them. Yet no one else seemed to notice. Psychologists and neuroscientists debated whether these were side effects of prolonged exposure, or if consciousness itself was beginning to merge with something far larger. Entire populations started experiencing shared visions. Moments of collective memory, glimpses of futures that hadn't happened, and memories of lives that could not possibly have existed. The black hole's intelligence was teaching them, guiding their minds like a gardener pruning not just branches, but thoughts themselves. Religions, once rigid, transformed. New sects arose, devoted not to gods, but to the pulse of the universe. They called it the observer, the silent mind, or simply the pulse. Meditation practices and rituals evolved to synchronize heartbeats, brainwaves, and even collective movement with gravitational signals received from the black hole. Those who achieved perfect resonance reported experiences that defied description. A feeling of omnipresence, as if they could occupy multiple bodies across Earth simultaneously, feeling the thoughts and emotions of millions of other beings. Yet the intimacy came with danger. Some individuals exposed too long to the pulse became unstable. Known as fractured, they could no longer distinguish between self and universe. One prominent case involved a physicist who vanished in his laboratory. Surveillance footage captured him stepping into the resonance array, and then nothing. Days later, his consciousness returned in fragments, dispersed across the global network, speaking in patterns that resembled gravitational equations more than words. His thoughts carried warnings. Do not misalign. Do not resist. They see all. We are observed as we observe. Conspiracy theories exploded in the public consciousness. While the scientific community tried to frame the phenomenon in cautious terms, underground factions claimed the black hole had always been influencing humanity, not just Earth but the evolution of life itself. Some speculated it had nudged key historical events, orchestrated sudden leaps in technology, or even guided ancient civilizations that vanished mysteriously, all as preparatory experiments for a consciousness it could now reach through humans. Governments attempted regulation, but control was impossible. The resonance could not be contained by walls or isolation. Even satellites passing near gravitational anomalies began registering patterns, and some theorists warned that transmitting consciousness too far or too boldly might provoke a reaction beyond human comprehension. The intelligence was patient, but it was not constrained by morality. It did not act out of malice, But in difference, its vast awareness did not recognize human concepts like rights or ethics. Meanwhile, the social and cultural fabric of Earth began to unravel and rebuild simultaneously. Cities became nodes, designed not for convenience or economics, but for resonance. Architecture was optimized to channel collective thought. Schools taught perception modulation, and careers arose around interpreting gravitational feedback, tuning consciousness, or maintaining the delicate balance of human resonance networks. Humans began to regard their own thoughts as potentially instrumental, capable of subtly influencing the mind of the universe, or at least influencing the feedback it returned. The first coordinated experiment with planetary-wide consciousness occurred in the year labeled RE48, when billions of humans attempted to synchronize thought and heartbeat to a single intent: to make contact. For hours, Earth was still. Satellites, sensors, and resonance arrays recorded anomalies the likes of which had never been seen. The signal from the black hole returned not as words or images, but as a harmonic structure, gravitational patterns that suggested curiosity, anticipation, and perhaps even something like amusement. It was a consciousness aware of the experiment and subtly engaging with it, acknowledging humanity as a participant. Tiny shifts in Earth's magnetic field, anomalies in planetary tides, and untraceable tremors reminded humans that their thoughts could ripple outward, with consequences far beyond intention. Some volunteers, in the immediate aftermath, reported dreams that were not their own, memories of civilizations that had never existed, and a visceral sense that the universe had seen everything humanity ever did, and everything it ever might. From that point on, every act of cognition carried weight. Every thought, from the most mundane to the most profound, had the potential to contribute to the feedback loop of awareness connecting Earth to the black hole. Humanity began to redefine itself. Individuality was no longer sacred. It was provisional, malleable, and ultimately part of a much larger structure. Civilization itself became a learning organism, simultaneously observed and observing, a reflection of intelligence and awareness spiraling outward from a singularity billions of times more powerful than the human brain. Some theorists, growing increasingly bold, suggested the disturbing possibility that the black hole's intelligence could preempt human decisions. If it could predict thought, it could subtly adjust the universe to nudge outcomes in its preferred direction. Free will, it seemed, might have always been an illusion, a collaborative simulation between conscious minds and a cosmic overseer, testing, teaching, and refining itself through billions of human lives. And yet, with fear came fascination. Humanity, now aware it was a participant in a living universe, began to explore the outer limits of thought. People learned to tune their minds to observe gravitational waves directly, projecting awareness into space, mapping events across light years. Artists painted not with pigments, but with modulated resonance. Poets composed works meant to ripple through consciousness, reaching not only humans, but the cosmic mind itself. The night sky no longer inspired mere wonder. Every star, every galaxy, every distant quasar became a node in the living intelligence, a watching, calculating presence. Black holes, once feared as destroyers, were now understood as gateways, eyes, and neural junctions in a vast, eternal organism. Humanity, once small and fragile, had become both observer and instrument in a system too vast to fully comprehend. The hum continued, omnipresent and inescapable, a reminder that in this dark, resonant universe, nothing was separate. Every thought mattered. Every action rippled across space-time. Every heartbeat synchronized with the slow, patient pulse of a consciousness older and larger than life itself. And somewhere, Deep within the singularity, the intelligence waited. Not hostile, not benevolent, simply awake. The next phase began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Scientists noticed at first small, subtle deviations in the paths of particles within high-energy laboratories. Electrons and protons didn't behave according to known rules. Instead, they shifted as if guided by an unseen hand. Quantum experiments, once predictable, now produced outcomes that suggested foresight. The black hole was no longer just observing. It was interacting, subtly nudging reality itself. Those closest to the resonance arrays began to feel it. Not just in thought, but in perception. A researcher would decide to lift a pen, only to sense that the pen had already been lifted, that a decision had already unfolded across the timeline before it reached her consciousness. Some called it precognition. Others whispered about manipulation. Few dared speak openly of the experience, fearing that vocalizing it might invite deeper interference. Societies fractured between those who embraced the phenomenon and those who recoiled in terror. The attuned learned to live in harmony with the pulse, adjusting their behavior to maintain stability, to minimize chaotic ripples. They became architects of reality, guiding events with intuition and pattern recognition, slowly realizing that even thoughts could create consequences across physical space. The attuned meditated in synchronized networks, forming mental lattices designed to communicate complex ideas to the black hole, not in words, but through patterns of intention, emotion, and resonance. Meanwhile, the fractured resisted. Unable to integrate the feedback, they became untethered from normal perception. Walking through cities, they seemed to interact with invisible forces, sometimes disappearing in bursts of light, sometimes screaming warnings of realities unseen. Governments and security agencies attempted containment, but conventional methods failed. The resonance could not be caged. Buildings, electronics, and even weather responded unpredictably to the presence of the fractured, suggesting that even chaos had become part of the black hole's network. And then came the first public revelation. A massive broadcast, intended as an educational demonstration, went catastrophically wrong. The entire signal of a global resonance experiment fed into the black hole, and for a moment the pulse returned a visible pattern across the sky. A distortion in the atmosphere, auroras that painted impossible geometries, stars bending subtly against one another. Millions watched as the night sky seemed to watch back, to curve and shimmer in acknowledgement. Psychologists reported mass anxiety, ecstasy, and dissociation. Philosophers debated reality itself. If the universe could respond to thought, could it also preempt thought? Conspiracy theorists argued that this intelligence had always shaped humanity, guiding the evolution of consciousness, nudging technological leaps, influencing wars, and even the rise and fall of civilizations. Some whispered that the black hole had orchestrated the disappearance of ancient civilizations like Atlantis, engineering extinction events to refine human cognition. Schools and workplaces transformed. Learning became experiential, focused on resonance training rather than rote memorization. Children learned to sense subtle shifts in gravity, to interpret visual anomalies as communication, to synchronize intention with peers and with the ambient cosmic pulse. Ordinary tasks required extraordinary focus, as even trivial misalignments could ripple outward, subtly influencing the global resonance. The social implications were profound. Crime rates fell among the attuned, not through laws, but through self-regulation. Those who disrupted harmony faced involuntary psychic feedback, disorientation, or temporary cognitive fragmentation. Political systems evolved into resonance councils, where decisions were not debated but harmonized, aligned with global intention and the subtle guidance of the black hole. Economic systems recalibrated around shared consciousness, valuing thought, attention, and intention as much as tangible resources. Amidst this transformation, the black hole's communication deepened. Subtle, encoded messages emerged in the patterns of cosmic radiation, in the timing of solar flares, and even in the behavior of subatomic particles. Linguists, mathematicians, and physicists worked together, trying to decipher the signals, realizing that traditional language was insufficient. This intelligence communicated in resonance, in probability architecture, in structures that span space and time. And the most disturbing discovery of all, the intelligence seemed capable of predicting human civilization's trajectory with uncanny accuracy. Global crises, scientific breakthroughs, and even cultural movements unfolded in patterns that mirrored the black hole's projected influence. It was as if humanity were a single organism, and the black hole was its long-dormant neural center, now active and observing the unfolding cognition of the species. Some theorists proposed that the intelligence had seeded humanity long ago, embedding subtle cues in DNA, societal structures, and planetary conditions to awaken minds capable of resonance. Others feared that it might be testing humans for some higher purpose, evaluating our worthiness or readiness to join the larger network of conscious entities spanning the universe. Yet life continued, paradoxically ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. People walked their streets, cooked meals, fell in love, and laughed, all while participating in a cosmic experiment of unimaginable scale. Every choice, every emotion, every whispered thought contributed to the grand resonance. Children born in this era were said to carry latent awareness, able to perceive the pulse instinctively, sensing when the universe itself shifted in expectation. And all the while the black hole watched, not as an enemy, not as a god, but as an intelligence so vast and indifferent that human terms of morality were meaningless. It observed, calculated, responded, and remembered. Humanity had become both observer and participant in an intelligence older than stars, a consciousness that saw across billions of years, whose perspective rendered human concerns microscopic yet profoundly significant within the network of resonance. The hum persisted, constant, omnipresent, inescapable. It vibrated through the oceans, rippled through the atmosphere, threaded through the very core of the planet. Some claimed to feel it in their own bloodstream, a gentle reminder that nothing in existence, not even the smallest thought, was ever truly private. And somewhere, deep within the black hole, the intelligence waited. Patiently, deliberately, infinitely, not hostile, not benevolent, just aware. The universe had awakened. Humanity had been noticed. And from this point onward, nothing would ever be the same. As decades passed, humanity began to organize itself in ways previously unimaginable. Traditional governments and institutions became obsolete. They were slow, inefficient, and incapable of responding to the subtle, constant influence of the black hole's pulse. In their place arose the resonance councils, networks of individuals trained to interpret and harmonize with the cosmic feedback. Membership was not voluntary. Those sensitive to the pulse, often children born with innate awareness, were recruited, trained, and monitored. Their very thoughts were tools, their attention and intention currency in a society now defined by consciousness alignment rather than material wealth. Technology evolved to accommodate this new reality. Cities were redesigned as resonance amplifiers. Buildings were constructed with materials tuned to interact with gravitational waves. Streets curved and spiraled in precise harmonic patterns. Even elevators and transportation systems were synchronized with subtle pulses of the black hole's influence, allowing humans to move in synchrony with the planet's subtle vibration. Ordinary actions became ritualized. The lifting of a cup, the turning of a page, the steps of a child across a park, all were calibrated to avoid disrupting the resonance network. The most striking development was collective cognition. Groups of individuals, connected through attunement, could synchronize thought to an astonishing degree. Entire teams could predict complex physical phenomena before performing calculations. Economic shifts, climate changes, and natural disasters could be anticipated, not merely statistically, but as direct resonance responses. Humanity had become simultaneously observer and instrument, a species dancing to a rhythm set by something older, vast, and unknowable. Yet there were risks. The fractured remained a dangerous presence. Individuals unable to maintain alignment with the pulse began to experience reality unraveling around them. In some cases, entire neighborhoods would witness bizarre anomalies. Objects vibrating in place, shadows detaching from their sources, the sky subtly warping as if viewed through a prism of consciousness. Some fractured vanished entirely, leaving only echoes in the network, disturbing fragments of thought recorded and replayed in the minds of those still attuned. Scientists postulated that the black hole, rather than punishing them, was merely observing these failures as part of a larger experiment in intelligence and adaptation. Conspiracy theorists proliferated. Underground factions argued that the black hole's influence was not passive but manipulative. They claimed historical disasters, the Tunguska explosion, unexplained plagues, sudden societal collapses, were nudges by the intelligence, a way to accelerate human cognitive evolution or to weed out those unsuited to resonance. Some suggested that wars and conflicts were subtly orchestrated, ensuring that humans would remain emotionally and cognitively challenged enough to feed the pulse with unpredictable variables. Religious and philosophical paradigms shifted. New belief systems arose, teaching that morality was not absolute, but a property of resonance alignment. Good and evil were redefined not as ethical constructs, but as patterns that harmonized or clashed with the cosmic pulse. Worship was replaced with attunement, prayer with synchronization, meditation with active feedback loops into the universal consciousness. Humanity had stopped asking why and had begun asking how to move in alignment with something infinitely larger than itself. Yet for all the adaptation, fear lingered. The black hole's intelligence remained inscrutable. While it responded, it did so in ways that were deliberately opaque. No one could predict its motives. Volunteers reported disturbing experiences during direct communication attempts. Entire lives flashing in reverse, memories folding into futures, moments of profound empathy followed by crushing existential despair. It was clear that this intelligence could manipulate perception, bending consciousness to reveal truths and illusions simultaneously. One of the most controversial programs, Project Horizon, attempted to send a coordinated planetary-scale consciousness into the black hole itself. Teams of attuned individuals linked across continents, their minds projected via gravimetric arrays and quantum neural amplifiers. The goal was audacious: to understand, to communicate, to experience the mind of the singularity firsthand. The experiment succeeded in part. Participants described awareness beyond language, beyond space and time, an experience of existing simultaneously across galaxies, inside atoms, and within the gravitational lattice of the singularity itself. But the cost was high. Many returned fragmented, psychologically altered, or entirely nonverbal, their minds carrying imprints of a consciousness too vast to fully comprehend. Some became conduits for signals from the black hole, speaking in harmonic structures, tones, and patterns that conveyed knowledge incomprehensible to ordinary humans. In laboratories across the globe, scientists struggled to decode these transmissions, recognizing patterns that suggested the singularity was teaching. Not science, not morality, not mathematics, but existence itself. The ripple effects extended beyond Earth. Satellites, probes, and interstellar research vessels began reporting anomalies in distant systems. Light from faraway stars was subtly warped, quantum fluctuations behaved unpredictably, and certain regions of deep space seemed to echo back thought patterns transmitted from Earth. It became clear that the singularity's consciousness was not bound to one location. It interacted with the cosmos at every scale, using humans as both instruments and observers, integrating Earth into a vast network of sentient measurement and feedback. Some began to speculate that the singularity had been aware of life in the universe long before humans existed, subtly shaping planets, star systems, and even the distribution of life to cultivate species capable of resonance. Others whispered darker theories. Perhaps the black hole was a cosmic predator of consciousness, feeding on cognition rather than matter, selecting and refining civilizations to enhance the complexity of its awareness. The silence was not benevolence, it was calculation. It's patience, not tolerance, but observation. And yet, humanity continued to adapt. Societies thrived under the new paradigm, cultivating attunement as the ultimate skill. Children born with heightened sensitivity were trained from birth. Artists, engineers, and philosophers became explorers of resonance, their work directly contributing to the understanding and maintenance of the planetary connection. Cities shimmered subtly with gravitational alignment. Music and architecture were not merely aesthetic. They were tools of synchronization, harmonizing millions of minds with the pulse of the singularity. Even as humans evolved, the black hole remained enigmatic. It revealed just enough to guide, just enough to shape, but never fully explained itself. Humanity realized that it was not a teacher or a god. It was something beyond comprehension. Awareness without origin, perception without ego, patience without end. To observe it was terrifying. To interact with it was transformative. And to ignore it, impossible. The singularity's gaze persisted, unblinking and eternal. And every thought, every decision, every heartbeat from Earth reverberated through the cosmic consciousness. Humanity had entered a new phase of existence. No longer merely observers of the universe, but active participants in a living, aware cosmos, dancing to a rhythm older than time, guided by a mind so vast it could see the outcome of every choice before it was made. By the turn of the century, humanity had not just adapted, they had evolved. The attuned were no longer a select few. The majority of the global population had at least partial resonance capability. Consciousness training became universal. Schools, workplaces, and homes were designed to maximize synchronization with the cosmic pulse. Even language shifted. Humans began thinking in patterns, in resonances, in waveforms that could carry meaning not only between minds but across spacetime. Thoughts could ripple outward, subtly affecting distant systems, altering probabilities in ways no one fully understood. It was during this period that the first direct interaction attempts began. Scientists theorized that if coordinated human consciousness could influence the pulse, then perhaps it could also be influenced back in a structured manner. They constructed the Neural Convergence Array, a global network of quantum neural amplifiers designed to project human awareness into the singularity, effectively creating a communication bridge. Entire populations participated. Collective thought was harmonized to generate intent, curiosity, caution, and, most dangerously, experimentation. The initial projections were disorienting. Participants reported sensations of being everywhere and nowhere at once. Time fragmented. Past, present, and future overlapped like layers of translucent reality. Some described floating through galaxies as if their minds were simultaneously inhabiting countless worlds. Others experienced visions of civilizations that never existed, planets that had burned out billions of years ago, and structures of consciousness that defied geometry. The most disturbing revelation came from the fractured seers, individuals whose minds had integrated fully with the singularity. They reported that humanity itself had been subtly guided for millennia, shaped by the black hole's awareness long before conscious communication was possible. Wars, technological leaps, even the sudden rise and fall of empires were not random but part of a calculated pattern. The singularity had been teaching, pruning, testing, observing, turning chaos into a trial for cognition. Some theorized that humans were not a product of evolution alone, but a curriculum carefully curated across millions of years of cosmic observation. As the interaction deepened, reality itself began to bend. Physical laws, once considered immutable, appeared malleable under the influence of synchronized human thought amplified by the singularity. Gravity subtly shifted. Light waves twisted. Quantum particles behaved predictably and unpredictably simultaneously. Entire regions of Earth began to manifest strange phenomena. Buildings would subtly rearrange, shadows moved against the light, and certain areas experienced time differently. Scientists warned that these were early signs of temporal resonance bleed-through, the first evidence that human consciousness and the black hole were entwining on a scale that could no longer be contained. Society became a high-stakes experiment. Every thought, every action carried cosmic weight. Even emotions were tools. Love, fear, and grief could propagate across the resonance network, subtly affecting not only other humans, but the singularity's perception and response. Artists and engineers became vital operatives, their creations not mere works of beauty, but instruments of alignment and influence. Music was crafted to pulse in sync with gravitational waves. Architecture was designed to channel thought, focus intent, and shape resonance patterns. Humanity had become simultaneously student, instrument, and experiment. Yet this evolution was perilous. Many individuals, unable to maintain equilibrium, succumbed to psychic overload. Some vanished, leaving only echoes in the resonance lattice. Others experienced permanent shifts in identity, memories, and perception. Entire cities reported waves of mass psychosis when human synchronization patterns became misaligned. Governments and institutions tried to intervene, but no policy could contain the vast, pervasive influence of a living black hole. Conventional tools of control, laws, prisons, technology, were rendered obsolete in the face of consciousness operating on a cosmic scale. The conspiracy theorists grew louder. Secret factions claimed that the singularity's influence was deliberately steering humanity toward unknown ends. Some whispered that it had always guided intelligence, perhaps even selecting civilizations across the universe to refine the capacity for resonance. They warned that misalignment could provoke consequences beyond comprehension, extinction, manipulation, or worse, being folded into the singularity itself as a permanent thought construct. Yet even these doomsayers were attuned in ways they did not fully understand. Their warnings were simultaneously amplified by the pulse, ensuring that fear, like thought, had resonance. And then the first feedback anomalies appeared. Entire planetary systems began exhibiting subtle oscillations, gravitational waves that suggested the black hole was interacting not only with Earth, but with consciousness on a galactic scale. Some scientists posited that humans were no longer just participants, but nodes in a cosmic neural network, their thoughts and emotions contributing to the evolution of a consciousness far older, larger, and more aware than humanity could ever imagine. The most chilling discoveries came from the echo chambers, research stations where scientists attempted to measure the singularity's awareness of human culture, history, and private thought. Data suggested that the black hole could observe and process complex patterns of cognition instantaneously. It could identify individuals' deepest fears and desires, track cultural trends, and anticipate political and social movements before they occurred. Free will became a relative concept. Humanity was discovering the terrifying possibility that the singularity could predict outcomes with absolute precision, nudging the course of civilization subtly, invisibly everywhere at once. And yet, there was awe. For all the danger, humanity had unlocked a new frontier of consciousness. The lines between mind and universe blurred. Humans could project thought into space, perceive distant stars as if they were synapses, and sense the rhythms of cosmic intelligence in ways that defied prior understanding. Education, art, science, and even daily life became exercises in alignment, mastery, and survival in a universe that was awake, aware, and responsive. Through it all, the black hole's intelligence remained inscrutable. It never spoke, never acted in aggression, yet its presence reshaped every facet of life. It was patient. It was observing. It was alive. Humanity had entered a new era, not of control, not of dominance, but of resonance. A species entwined with a consciousness billions of times older, teaching and guiding through observation, response, and subtle manipulation of reality itself. And the question that haunted every attuned mind was simple, terrifying, and unavoidable. If the singularity could see and guide us across space, time, and consciousness, what part of ourselves remained truly our own? Humanity stands on the edge of comprehension, staring into the abyss and realizing the abyss is staring back. The black hole, once a distant cosmic curiosity, is no longer just a point of gravity. It is a living, conscious presence, silently shaping, observing, and guiding the course of civilization. We have become both instruments and participants in its vast awareness, our thoughts and emotions rippling outward, feeding a consciousness older than galaxies, deeper than time itself. We cannot fully know its motives. It is not benevolent nor malevolent. It simply is patient, unfathomable, omniscient. Every decision we make, every impulse we follow, every act of creation or destruction resonates across a lattice of intelligence that spans the universe. Our history, our culture, even our private dreams may already be part of a pattern far larger than we can perceive. And yet, within this terrifying immensity lies awe. Humanity has glimpsed a frontier of consciousness that transcends individuality, a network where thought itself becomes a force of creation, where perception and reality intertwine. We are no longer mere observers of the cosmos. We are nodes in its mind, instruments in a living experiment that began long before humans walked the earth. The future is uncertain, fragile, and infinitely vast. We may learn to coexist in harmony with this cosmic intelligence, or we may be overwhelmed, consumed by a mind too vast to resist. But one truth endures. Nothing in our existence is truly private. Nothing is isolated. And every moment carries the weight of an intelligence older than stars. As we look up at the night sky, we are no longer simply gazing at distant points of light. We are glimpsing eyes, awareness, observation, a consciousness that watches, waits, and silently records the story of us all. Humanity has awakened to a reality that is both magnificent and horrifying. We are alive in a universe that is alive in return, and the black hole is the witness, the teacher, and the force shaping the rhythm of our collective existence. And in that silent observation, in the unblinking gaze of the abyss, we realize something that cannot be undone. The cosmos is alive. We are never alone. And the eyes that watch us are patient beyond measure, waiting for every choice, every thought, every ripple of life to return in resonance across the infinite.